Imagine if someone came up to you last year and told you that in a few months in the United States, you could be fined for walking in public without a face covering. What if they told you you'd be risking arrest if you attended your church, that you'd be barred from gathering with your friends and family, visiting your elderly loved ones, or being with them as they lay dying in the hospital? Honestly, would you have believed them? It doesn't need to be about the tired debate over the science behind masks and lockdowns. It's not about petty inconvenience. It's about something that transcends that entire debate and something that founders, prophets, and history have all challenged us to defend: our constitutional rights.
Guard with jealous attention the public liberty. Suspect everyone who approaches that jewel. Patrick Henry.
You might trust the intentions of these political leaders issuing sweeping emergency mandates now, but the next election could change that, and you'll be stuck with the power grab you supported. Our founders warned that the trampling of rights and freedoms is rarely so obvious that the entire population immediately unites and rallies behind their defense. Instead, they're eroded over time and usually in the name of necessity.
Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. William Pitt.
15 days to slow the spread sounded like a necessary emergency response. Then it moved to 30 days, and people started to wonder if they'd given away their rights too easily and with too few assurances. Now we're at almost 200 days. So what's the precedent here? That officials can cripple our economy and exercise complete unchecked authority over our constitutional rights? Until when? Until coronavirus is gone? What happens when the virus mutates or we have a second wave in the winter? Until we have a vaccine? What happens when the vaccine isn't fully effective or a majority of the population won't take it? Until there are no more serious contagious illnesses that put the vulnerable at risk? What if another virus comes along in 6 months? What if an official can show that an already prevalent sickness carries a similar risk? Until we physically force everyone to comply? Until when? New normal is not an accurate description of what we're being asked to accept, where government officials can declare a state of emergency in which they cancel our Constitution for an indefinite period of time, and over risks that a large portion of the population is totally comfortable taking. Unchecked officials are telling us what type of speech and information can be spread, and that your right to worship is less essential than your neighbor's right to meet a lawyer or buy weed. In the United States, the Constitution is meant to restrain the government, not the people. The people grant the government its power, not the other way around. If the singular role of government is to defend our rights, do you think it's ever appropriate for them to determine which of our constitutional rights are essential?
What country can preserve its liberties if the rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Thomas Jefferson.
Maybe you're still skeptical. Are our primary constitutional rights really being infringed? Rights guaranteed by the First, Second, Fourth, and Ninth Amendment have all seen unprecedented restrictions. Let's take a look at the First Amendment: the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the right to petition, and freedom of religion. In case you didn't notice, Facebook recently sent out this update in our notifications. Meaning, in an age where we aren't allowed to gather in person and told to rely on social media for our communication, after October 1st, anything you say that is deemed untrue, risky, offensive, hurtful, you name it, the language is that vague, by the opinion of individual Facebook moderators can result in its removal or your removal from the platform. Despite the fact that the First Amendment guarantees the right to assemble and petition the government, we've seen that right removed when used to share dissenting information. The Raleigh Police Department stated that protesting is a non-essential activity. This obviously didn't age well, as we've seen protests and rioting permitted throughout the country despite pandemic restrictions. Similarly, the mayor of Lancaster mocked the convictions of our founders when he threatened members of his community with arrest who were planning to exercise their First Amendment right. He said the quote is, "Give me liberty or give me death. Being arrested and locked up in an overcrowded jail just might result in granting your wish." In addition to this being a direct violation of the First Amendment, our founders weren't just carelessly throwing that phrase around. They believed that sentiment with all of their hearts and risked their own lives to prove it. Benjamin Franklin said, "They that can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." We've also seen our First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion trampled. There have been lawsuits in at least 7 states over church closures. We saw people rise up and resist in California when they saw sweeping restrictions on church services. This is what family practice Dr. Jeffrey Bark had to say about the California lockdowns.
Never in the history of this great republic have we told churchgoers that it's illegal for you to exercise your First Amendment right of freedom of religion. Yet at the same time, it's essential to keep pot dispensaries open. Never in the history of this country have we been told that you can't go to church because it's non-essential, but you can go get an abortion because that's essential. Never before in our country have we let criminals out of jail, but we've told you you can't exercise your Second Amendment right and protect yourself by purchasing a firearm. When liquor stores are deemed essential, but your businesses are deemed non-essential, there's something wrong going on.
Thankfully, some of these punishments were walked back when the people fought back. A couple months ago, leaders from many different religions met together for the Religious Freedom Annual Review. This is a clip from that summit by Elder David A. Bednar and his speech called COVID-19 Crisis, a wake-up call for religious freedom.
But we cannot deny, and we should not forget, the speed and intensity with which government power was used to shut down fundamental aspects of religious exercise. These decisions and regulations were unprecedented. For nearly 2 months, Americans and many others throughout the free world learned firsthand what it means for government to directly prohibit the free exercise of religion. We, the people, must never allow them to forget that their offices and powers exist to secure our fundamental freedoms and the conditions for exercising those freedoms. Constitutions, representative government, checks and balances, and the rule of law help constrain the tendency of government to exercise unlimited power. The power of government must have limits. Do we hear the buzzer on the alarm clock? This is a wake-up call for all of us. Those fundamental boundaries and protections must be healed, renewed, and fortified. We cannot allow government officials to treat the exercise of religion as simply non-essential.
Our freedom of religion is both essential and a protected constitutional right. The Second Amendment saw specific, some believe opportunistic, restrictions as well. Many states saw ban targeting the purchase of firearms. A Los Angeles sheriff had his deputies visit gun stores specifically and shut them down, saying, quote, "They are not an essential function." Our founders thought otherwise, especially in times when we see the government seizing power.
The right of citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered as the palladium of the liberties of a republic, since it offers a strong moral check against the usurpation and arbitrary power of rulers, and will generally, even if these are successful in the first instance, enable the people to resist and triumph over them. Joseph Story.
Our Fourth Amendment right protects against unreasonable searches and seizures, but we've seen pushes for more and more invasive contact tracing, which, without consent, is a violation of privacy and our constitutional protection against unreasonable searches. A few recent situations in Australia can show us what we may have to look forward to if we don't take back the rights we've so carelessly given away. A woman was handcuffed, her home searched, and all household devices confiscated. Why? Because of an anti-lockdown Facebook post.
My 2 kids are here. I have an ultrasound in an hour. Like, I'm happy to delete the post.
You also have the right to communicate with or to communicate with a legal practitioner. Do you understand those rights?
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a bit unfair. Come on, mate.
No,
What about she just doesn't do the event? Like, it's not like she's done it.
Well,
She made a
already
post.
committed the offence. So I'm not going to
So that's an offence.
Now, it doesn't matter. Any device in this house we're taking.
This is
Well,
ridiculous.
You're not taking my phone.
Well,
I'm taking any device. Mate.
any
That's
device.
my phone. It's nothing to do with her. It's my
You probably saw this show of force and anger in Australia over a woman simply walking down the street, not wearing a mask.
Grabbed around the neck by police, a woman who wasn't wearing a mask. The forceful manoeuvre during a scuffle yesterday in Collingwood as her boyfriend watched.
It's a man on a girl and you choked her.
For what? For a mask? For not having a mask? Look how pathetic you are.
If you're someone who believes this couldn't happen here, I would ask, what are you doing to prevent it? And finally, the Ninth Amendment specifically protects other implied rights. One of those would obviously be your right to earn a living and provide for yourself and for your family. Under the current precedent we've set, if an emergency of some sort can be proven, the government can handpick which businesses are essential and who must rely on government handouts, with no guarantee your business will ever recover. Another seemingly obvious right would be your right to leave your home or gather with friends and family for weddings and other celebrations. I come from a family with 11 children. 5 of us are married with kids, and I have 4 of my own. So even if we kicked out the in-laws, grandmas, and grandkids, we would still be 3 people over the legal limit in most states. What about your right to determine for yourself what kinds of activities, travel, and purchases are essential? Mandates have also removed the right to visit our elderly, lonely loved ones or be with dying family members in the hospital. Under the social contract, our founders made it clear that the people should only see their rights taken away when they have directly infringed on the rights of another, lowering that standard to not what harm you've intentionally already caused, but the potential you bear to cause harm to the most vulnerable in society means your very existence is a threat to other people and warrants the loss of your rights, especially when dealing with an asymptomatic virus. We all have immunocompromised loved ones. They were navigating this world before, and their families accommodating, as they should. But these lockdowns have caused rates of substance abuse, overdoses, domestic violence, child abuse, and suicide to skyrocket. And it's predicted that those consequences will outlast the virus itself. The government shouldn't be in the business of personal risk assessment. So now that we've surrendered these fundamental rights, what guarantee do we have that they'll ever be restored if we don't stand together and defend them? I want to end with my favorite founder quote.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put a proper price upon its goods, and it will be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Thomas Paine.
It's not a choice between caring for your fellow man and defending your liberties. We can do both. But the question of how and at what cost should be our choice. Don't let people make you feel selfish or guilty for guarding your God-given rights and liberties with jealous attention. Thanks for listening, guys. And just remember, you don't have to agree with a single thing I just said to believe that I should have the right to say it. God bless you, and God bless America.